Crbnly conversation.
Quick question. Is this the podcast? Are we doing the podcast right now? Here we are. It's Saturday.
It is Saturday.
That means we're recording.
As usual, another episode, Crbnly Conversations.
Coming at you fresh.
If you've listened to us before, you know the drill. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube.
I just want to say, smash that like button. It's so good for the algorithm.
Yeah,
which I heard in 2 plays in the last month, like as a line. So I'm just like, it's true, but it's part of now our subculture.
Yeah.
Pop
I have
culture.
to create I have to help my mom create a YouTube login because she's logged into my YouTube account at her house.
Oh no!
And my algorithm's all messed up.
And you get to see what your mom is searching.
She watches the most random videos, and then when my nephew's there, she lets him watch, I forget what the little kid's name is, Ryan. It's this kid named Ryan that, he gets millions of views on every video. It's just this little kid that just does stuff, shows you how to make slime and whatever. So now I've got all these other videos across my timeline, and it's just throwing my algorithm off really bad on my YouTube page. So
you may never get back to where you were.
Maybe not.
Maybe bet.
But
yeah, so smash that like button. Disrupt your
smash
algorithm.
The like, subscribe.
Get your Crbnly. Subscribe.
Yes. Subscribe to us. We're a little slow on TikTok, but we try to put some things here and there on TikTok for you guys. But
we got plenty of backstory to go, and just dive deep into us. That doesn't sound.
I'm willing to bet there's no listener out there, maybe other than us, that have listened to. Maybe I haven't even went back and listened to every single episode we've released. So there's plenty out there. Check us out. You can go down a rabbit hole and spend all day listening to us talk. So
Crbnly hole, Shane.
Crbnly hole.
Crbnly hole.
But
dig deep into the Crbnly universe.
Yep.
Or the Crbnly verse. Ooh, I like that one.
Anyways, I think today's topic, I think, is a lot different and newer than things that we usually talk about somewhat relate to each other. But I think today's topic is a really different lane than what we've taken before.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I didn't even think about it like that because to me, it like rolls up into how do we get to a more sustainable future, and what are the things we can all do here and there. Because as our listeners and maybe new listeners will come to learn, is we try to make it practical, applicable to where we're at in our lives. I always like to say, like, Shane and I can't, or we don't believe we can rally the troops to close multiple coal plants. Don't have the time, don't have the expertise, and they're going to make a big impact on the environment, not having these coal plants. There's other ramifications if you close coal plants. I won't digress because I like to do that. But we want to get in that lane of what we can do. And I think this is kind of a lane of what you can do, but it's also really interesting. Yeah. And I sent it your way, Shane, because it's an area of reading that I've flirted with over the last 10 years of learning. But it really rallies around who truly owns the right of a clean environment, right? Whose responsibility is for that and who owns it. And we shared an article that was published in the BBC, but you can find it in a lot of different other news organizations, talking about the European Court, which is the EU court system, rules that a human rights violated by climate inaction. So in essence, there's this group of older Swiss women who have won the first ever climate case victory in a European Court of Human Rights. And the women, mostly in their 70s, said, more or less argued the case that because of their age and gender, it's made them particularly vulnerable to the effects of heat waves linked to climate change. And when they presented their case, and others like this, the court decided that what Switzerland said they were going to do to lower their carbon footprint and lower their carbon emissions. They've been lacking, and actually I haven't been held accountable to the statements they made with the actions that they've been doing to get there. And the European courts sided with this group of old ladies and said, yeah, Switzerland is harming you, because they're pretty much saying, like, when we have heat waves, we can't go outside. And we like to go outside. We want to go and do shit. Like, we didn't just get old to die. We got old to go and be adventurous and do fun things. And so these like increase of climate weather related events like actually impacts their life. And and I'll kind of turn over and get your perspective and reaction to all that. But that's what got me all excited and shared this with Shane. And for me, it just rallies around that thought or that question. Is like, who truly owns the right of a clean environment? Like, whose responsibility and who owns it?
Yeah.
Which I think is the most Crbnly question to ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting situation because, like, while I do agree with these women that were part of this lawsuit, I'm also just kind of like, well, if everyone starts doing that, like, first of all, like, where's that money gonna come from? So, like, if we're suing our city or something like that, then in the long run, us as taxpayers are going to pay for that. I definitely think there's some companies out there, especially like some of the larger oil companies and things like that, that we could try doing that. But it just, I don't know, it just kind of blew my mind, the fact that they won. And I kind of did go down a rabbit hole, and there are some suits in progress here in America. But I just think that in America, it's going to be even harder. Like, if you remember, we did the Amazing Race to Zero Waste episode, which we highlighted Switzerland as like, was it the number one Crbnly like country? It's like top 3 if it's not number one.
With some of the things that they're already doing.
Right. So it really surprised me, even for that fact of just like, oh, I thought Switzerland was doing it right, and to find out that, these women are suing.
And a high court sided with them, because that usually, when you research, I can't imagine you found many. If you found any, doesn't happen. Like, they're like, no. Usually the plaintiffs are like, the court says, you guys don't have a right to stand. Like, the grounds you're suing on aren't, like, you don't own the right to a clean environment. Yeah, because it's not written into our law, or it's not written into our policy, or it is. There's nowhere that says that you have this right. And that's what I think is really important. Like, if we take a step back, in my mind, I equate this court case to similar legal challenges against the tobacco industry in the 90s, and where they had to pay all these repercussions of polluting the air for other people, smokers, because in the end, it was really like, who owned the right of clean air in the United States? Was it the people that smoke cigarettes, or the people that didn't smoke cigarettes? Because if you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance you grew up where ashtrays were everywhere, and you could smoke just about everywhere, from like in the bathroom on the airplane to every restaurant, inside of the cars that you rode. Like, God, maybe the bus driver was smoking while he brought you to school. Teachers were outside smoking. Like, right? Cigarettes were everywhere. Just were. Really great job, tobacco companies, of making sure your products sold and worked. But eventually that tide turned, right? And there's many reasons. We could unpack all that and actually talk about the Crbnly lens of how that was better for our environment, or not, because of the replacements. But anyways, like, so the non-smokers finally won the right to own clean air around them in the United States, right? That's a big deal. It's a big statement to make. And because it's changed the quality of life for all of us that didn't smoke, but it took something monumental like that. So for me, like, this group of Swiss women, there's a name in the article. Like, they're like a club.
I forget what it was.
But like, now own the accountability rights to the Swiss government, to saying, like, you said you would do these things, why aren't you doing them? And I kind of want to unpack a little bit with what you just said about, like, yeah, so if everyone starts suing their cities, municipalities, and governments, and if they do have standing and win, in my mind, it forces these policymakers to decide where the tax dollars are going, where they're going to invest new tax dollars. And then that becomes trade-offs, right? So do we cut library services? Do we cut public transit? Like, I don't know, like, what they're going to cut or not cut if they have to do this. But it does force them to commit the money behind the statements that they're saying that they're going to lower their carbon footprint and lower the carbon, just the race to, like, zero carbon by 2050. I think it's like the United States pledge, like, goals to get in, even sooner. But, like, can we actually get there? If you start measuring today, they're saying no, like, there's no way we're going to lower all that carbon in time by 2050. So I think of it as a form of accountability, because it's really easy to promise these pledges. It's really hard to execute them, especially you can promise them and then you get everyone that says no thanks, or not my backyard, or I'm overgeneralizing there, but
I found like some statistics on it looks like Columbia University, so columbia.edu. So it says that according to the report, which let's see, I can't find the name of the report right now, but Columbia University, pretty reputable, but the number of climate cases has more than doubled in the last 5 years, and litigation is expected to continually increase. It says that as of the start of this year, 2023 is when this was written. So there were 2,180 climate change cases underway around the world, with 1,522 in the United States alone. And then that covers 55 different countries. But it also says many of the U.S. cases so far have been thrown out of court. So yeah,
truth.
But like you said, with your smoking example, we have to continue to do this in order to make the change. Like, yes, most of them are being thrown out right now, but all it takes is like that one big win to get the ball rolling.
1,000 times true. Like, because I think smoking it's a really apt example in my mind. So I'm curious, Shane, because there's two cases, because I was like, oh my God, I've like read about this stuff in the United States. And there's one specifically called Juliana versus United States. And this was since 2015, where and this is the contrast of like what this group of women in Switzerland, which forgive me.
Yeah, I was trying to find what the.
Okay, not made it like this is a quote. They're the Klima Seniorinnen, is like the senior women of climate. Elizabeth Stern, 76, told BBC that she's seen how the climate in Switzerland has changed since she's a child growing up on a farm. Asked about her commitment to the case, she said, "Some of us are just made that way. We're not made to sit in a rocking chair and knit. We know statistically in 10 years we will be gone. So whatever we do now, we are not doing for ourselves, for the sake of our children and our children's children." But what's interesting, the BBC goes on and shows that there was a court case from Portuguese young people that they tried to win against 32 European governments. And they were like aged 12 to 24, and they're saying extreme heat waves, wildfires left them unable to go outside and play and go to school. But the courts turned them back and said you had to solve that locally first before you can come to the European court. And this is where I think it gets interesting, because the case in the United States, Juliana versus United States, is in 2015, like 21 young Americans, and at the time, I think they were like 8 to 14 or 8 to 16. And they've all aged, of course. This is like 10 years ago. sued the United States or the Department of Justice, representing the United States, that because of their age and what's projected to happen to the climate in the United States, they're screwed. And in representation of everyone, like if we can't live a life that is promised to us from the Bill of Rights, Constitution, the pledge to climate change and the Paris climate and beyond the other climate pledges, like you guys aren't doing your job based off of like providing us the right to a clean environment, a stable economy, a sustainable system of goods and services, right? And this case has just been delayed in court this whole time. They keep trying to file it to get it kicked out, and then people try to get it going back and again and through the appeals process. In essence, it still has no conclusion. It's still ongoing, but even the Biden administration is trying to kick the can and not deal with it, right? And good or bad, whatever that means. But it would mean like if these kids won, like the whole United States, it would declare that we as people own a clean environment. We own the right of a clean environment. And the government needs to work to provide it, which could look so many different ways, but probably won't look like what we're doing right now. And that, I can't ever see that case being tried, because I mean, it'd be great fodder for everyone that wants to be influential.
Oh, there'd be tons of followers. I mean,
like I just don't want to imagine that hellscape of online information. But that one exists. And I think it's a big one. Like if you're talking with a climate activist, or you bring it up with like a pro environment person, most people know this. The second one that I wanted to bring up is in Montana specifically. So still young kids, and they sued the state of Montana for violating its constitutional right to a clean and healthful environment, like allowing continued fossil fuel development without considering its effect on the climate. And that's like, I think the positioning of this is really clear. And they won because Montana is one of a few states that has a clause in its constitution that guarantees citizens a clean and healthy environment, which meant like if they're not providing all the things, or they're allowing things to happen that are mitigating that, they are now responsible to fix that, because it's in the Constitution. The Constitution covers everyone that lives in Montana, and everyone in the lawsuit lives in Montana, right? And they won, which forced the state of Montana to like deal with some of this stuff. How and what and the legalese of all that is probably messy and clunky. And I don't want to get into the details of that here, but it's a case where they did show we own this, because the Constitution of the state of Montana says we have this right. Do something about it, because what you're doing is the opposite. And that's where it just like, sometimes I think if we could get clarity around this, like we wouldn't need to talk about Crbnly conversations, because then some of the bigger things that would need to happen, corporations, when their profit seeking motives, would start to update their responsibilities, because Pepsi Cola, Nabisco, you pick a brand right now, you buy shit from them, and we're responsible for getting rid of the package, right? We're responsible to make sure it goes in the right bin. We pay taxes to the city, and they're supposed to like recycle it responsibly. We've talked about this. Most people won't recycle correctly. About 30%, Americans on overall, and then we're not even convinced that some of this stuff actually gets recycled. Like aluminum does, glass kinda, depending on where you live. Cardboard most of the time, because it has a valuable second life shelf. But I think the ownership will stop being on us, which is what we talk about, since it is on us. Crbnly conversations exist, and it would start to shift onto the companies that are producing all the goods. Because I think that's what the government would do.
Yeah. It's interesting, because I haven't even, until this article, I haven't really even thought of, like, are there people out there suing their local governments, and, with the ladies that are in the article, I'm sure having Greta Thunberg there with you doesn't hurt. You know what I mean? I mean, you're talking about one of the leading activists, for climate change in the world. But it's interesting, and I think another thing, one last thing that I found that may help anyone out there listening, that if you're more interested about this and whatnot. So in the same Columbia article, it says that there's 6 major categories of climate lawsuits. So those 6 categories are climate rights, domestic enforcement of international climate change commitments, keeping fossil fuels and carbon sinks in the ground, corporate liability and responsibility, climate disclosures and greenwashing. So that's, I mean, tons of companies out there you could sue for that. And failure to adapt an impact of adaptation. So I think that's kind of interesting too with those categories.
Legal or angles to bring a lawsuit.
Basically, yeah.
As long as you have standing, right? Yep. Standing meaning like you have the legal right to sue someone about this thing because of the jurisdiction or the Constitution and specifically where you live.
Yeah.
Because it's happening to you. But again, like the contrast of like these elderly ladies, like, hey, we only got 10 years left or less, and you're shitting on the way we live by not doing anything. And then the cases that we talked about here, where it's a bunch of young kids, like, you guys are everything you're doing is shitting on our ability to live a life that you all have gotten to live because of the climate. I feel like we could just come back to this and see where some of these cases have gone in the next few months.
This makes me almost want to, I don't know how much it has to do with the climate, but like in the last year or so, Verizon has put up a tower kind of near my house. And they offered everyone in the neighborhood free internet for a year. And I'm like, now this makes me like want to write them. Like, we should get free internet as long as your tower is up and operating if we live within a certain distance of it.
Yeah.
You know,
we'll keep it here, but we have to deal with the consequences.
Right.
And it shouldn't be, because they just greased the wheel to get all the permits approved.
Mm-hmm.
And if you got everyone around that tower to say, hey, this is what we want, or here's what we're going to do, please address this. I bet they come to the table, a local representative.
I mean, come on. What's giving 100 households free internet?
Well, they will fight it tooth and nail.
They've got better lawyers.
How many towers do they have?
Right.
And how many? If you did that, would you tell everyone? I would tell them for you. I would tell everyone that would listen to me. It's like, look what you guys can do. Here's a model.
Yep.
But I love that idea.
Yeah, I might have to look into that. But,
I mean, oh my God, I'm ranting now, but my suspicion is most towers are placed in economically depressed areas.
Yep.
And like most, not all, because you still need coverage where affluent economic conditions exist as well. But my guess it's the land's cheaper and it's easier and there's probably less pushback. So this could be because when you think about access to internet, it's such a big difference maker, especially for low income families, economically depressed neighborhoods. And I mean, I don't have to talk about the virtues of having access to the internet,
Right.
But that could be an angle. It's like, no. You put these towers here.
Yeah.
Here's all the horrible shit that might or might not be happening, but everyone should get free internet because it's going to lift them up. Like Verizon should want to do that from a corporate policy, or at least give it reduced rates.
Yeah. Yep.
Depending on your income and stuff. So anyways, I think you got legs there, Shade.
Yeah. I might have to do some more research and write them a letter.
So I really want to ask, I think this is the Crbnly question. Will you sue or look to sue your government for your right for a clean and responsible environment? Clearly you're going to sue Verizon, but let's talk about your government, your local politics.
I'd have to, just reading those 6 categories, like, I feel like I'd rather I don't know. I feel like I'd rather find a company to sue. I'm being a little greedy. Like I would, when I think of suing someone, I think of like getting some money out of it.
That's fair. I mean, that's fair.
I'm all for, I think that where I live at in Columbus is doing a pretty decent job right now to try and combat climate change. So I think
That's
that
good.
for any time, I think right now is probably not the right time to try to sue them for that. But
there might be some corporations that could get.
Yeah.
Well, you and I both know a lawyer from Louisville, so
we do, yeah. So, yeah, we might have to reach out to him. But I mean, anything to try to help the movement of just slowing down climate change. At least, there's no stopping it, but at least slowing it down right now.
Yeah, I think I'm in that principled area as well. I think it would be a really great way if anyone wanted to launch a political campaign, like to be elected to some type of office.
Yeah.
Outside of the door knocking and getting to know your neighborhood in a way that others haven't or don't anymore. I think that would be a major statement that you could make as well. So exciting times. Like I'm truly passionate about that question of who owns the environment. And as I think we close out here, I asked our good friend, the robot, who owns the government? And its initial response is the concept of who, quote, owns the environment is complex and varies depending on cultural, legal, and philosophical perspectives. Here are a few ways to look at it. And it lists like government, private, common, and public. Pretty much like the textbook answer if I was in an econ 205 or 305 macroeconomics class.
Yeah.
So I may try to see if I can get to but who truly owns it? Is it fair? Maybe that's what I should ask. Is it fair for the people not to own the environment? Anyways, I know we're wrapping up here, so I'll go down a rabbit hole of my own and report back.
Yeah. Anyone out there listening, I don't know, if you're part of any of the ongoing lawsuits currently, reach out to us. We'd like to learn more about it, and I'll try to get the ball rolling on my Verizon case and keep everyone updated with that.
That's awesome. Well, have a great Crbnly weekend, Shane.
Yeah, I wish we should have like a judge's gavel sound.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that. That's our thumbnail.
Yeah. Greta Thunberg as a judge.
Yeah. I love that.
Till next time, friends.
Till next time.